With health, everything is a source of pleasure. Without it, nothing else, whatever it may be, is enjoyable. Chapter 2 in Schopenhauer's practical handbook on the good life, Aphorisms on the wisdom of life, is entitled What a Man Is. While Schopenhauer admits that there are two other sources of happiness, namely in possession and in reputation or fame, he argues that only in this category can we find lasting true happiness. Fortune may always change, but not character. Character and personality are important because they are the lens that will color all experience of life. When we use that English expression, to enjoy oneself, we are employing a very striking and appropriate phrase. For, observe, one says not, he enjoys Paris, but he enjoys himself in Paris. To a man possessed of an ill-conditioned individuality, all pleasure is like a delicate wine in a mouth made bitter with gall. We shouldn't be surprised that we find this same idea, that life is not so much about the experience itself as about your reaction to the experience, in the writings of the ancient Stoics. We have done a separate video on Schopenhauer's appraisal of the Stoics, link in the description. This means we must search in our individual subjectivity for the source of true happiness. What does this mean exactly? Subjective blessings, a noble nature, a capable head, a joyful temperament, bright spirits, a well-constituted, perfectly sound physique, in a word, mens sana in corpore sano, are the first and most important elements in happiness, so that we should be more intent on promoting and preserving such qualities than on the possession of external wealth and external honor. You might be surprised to hear that Schopenhauer, the famous pessimist, is such a proponent of a cheerful character. It's even more important than intellect or physical health. Of all these, the one that makes us most directly happy is a genial flow of good spirits, for this excellent quality is its own immediate reward. The man who is cheerful and merry has always a good reason for being so, the fact, namely, that he is so. Of course, you could say that a cheerful disposition is the result of happiness, not the cause of it. Not necessarily so for Schopenhauer. While we should always welcome a merry feeling when it arrives, for it never arrives inopportunely, its arrival is ultimately largely out of our control. We should enjoy it when it's here, but it's better to learn how to be content without it. We can make our lives better, however, if we work on the conditions that make it easier for cheer and joy to arrive on our doorstep. And the most important thing you can do for this is to take care of your health. We know from biographical information that Schopenhauer was overly concerned with his own health. He took a cold bath every morning and walked for 2 hours per day, even in his old age. Schopenhauer gives us a list of recommendations, such as the need for daily exercise in the open air, cold baths, the avoidance of stress and negative emotions. But what is missing, curiously enough, is a warning against unhealthy food. Could it be that unhealthy food was simply not a concern for someone writing in 1851, before fast food and other processed foods were widely consumed? This discussion on physical health is not merely here for show. Schopenhauer is abundantly clear on its importance. 9/10 of our happiness depends upon health alone. With health, everything is a source of pleasure. Without it, nothing else, whatever it may be, is enjoyable. Even the other personal blessings, a great mind, a happy temperament, are degraded and dwarfed for want of it. If 9/10 of our happiness is dependent upon our good health, then what is the other 10%? The other 10% consists in successfully fighting against two great enemies, pain and boredom. The human experience is characterized by a constant struggle of both avoiding pain and avoiding boredom. But this is a fool's errand, because in the degree in which we are fortunate enough to get away from the one, we approach the other. Life presents, in fact, a more or less violent oscillation between the two. Unlike other passages in the Wisdom of Life, this point is actually in complete agreement with Schopenhauer's main philosophy. Being in a state of need is equal to being in pain or suffering. Accordingly, the poor are in a state of suffering because all of their energy is directed towards fulfilling their needs for food and shelter. The rich, on the other hand, have all their needs met. And what is the reward for that? Boredom. It's obvious how we can win the battle against the first enemy, pain. This is an objective condition. Good health, and also enough money and property to live comfortably, is the solution. Chances are, if you are watching this YouTube video, your problem, in Schopenhauer's terms, is not pain but boredom. Boredom is a subjective state of mind. Therefore, the cure for boredom is found within yourself. The cure for boredom is the development of the intellect. The cure for boredom is studying. Nothing is so good a protection against such misery as inward wealth the wealth of the mind, because the greater it grows, the less room it leaves for boredom. Nothing pleasures the mind so much as the contemplation of ideas. To the great mind, ideas never run out, and so the pleasure gained from them is infinite. And because the pleasures of the intellect are subjective, even the most boring of objective circumstances, for example, waiting in line, become bearable for the intellectually gifted person. While others have to distract themselves from their boring environment, an intelligent mind will simply turn to itself and delight in its own thought. Schopenhauer also makes a ranking of leisure time activities. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the greatest intellects concern themselves with philosophy and poetry, art forms that are not dependent upon the will or the body, but only on the intellect. Engagement with the natural sciences, such as biology or chemistry, are of a lower rank. While intellectually stimulating, they do not concern themselves with ideas as such, but rather with representations, aka the natural world. Then, further down the line, we have, for example, fine dining, an enjoyable activity that will stave off boredom for sure, but that is so deeply rooted in the objective world that the intellect plays very little part in it. And that last is Schopenhauer's most hated activity, playing cards and other games of chance. This is activity for activity's sake, a completely pointless way of killing time that serves no purpose beyond itself. In Schopenhauer's theory of happiness, free time is so important that no amount of money or status can replace it. The man to whom nature and fate have granted the blessing of wisdom will be most anxious and careful to keep open the fountains of happiness which he has in himself, and for this, independence and leisure are necessary. To obtain them, he will be willing to moderate his desires and harbor his resources, all the more because he is not, like others, restricted to the external world for his pleasures. The flip side of this story is that continuous intellectual development will lead to alienation. Crudely speaking, other people around you simply can't keep up. This gives an isolation to their character, which is all the more effective since other people never really quite satisfy them as being, on the whole, of a different nature. But to the true person of genius, this is not a big deal. In fact, the genius enjoys being alone, free from the distractions that social life offers. So, in a nutshell, here is how Schopenhauer recommends you spend your time. Step 1. Have as much free time as possible. Step 2. Take care of your health by taking long walks and cold baths. Step 3. Develop your talents, preferably in art, philosophy and poetry, or science. One of the critiques of the wisdom of life is that Schopenhauer seems to have written it simply to rationalize his own behaviors and personality. Schopenhauer loved taking long walks and ice-cold baths. And what do you know? He just so happens to recommend these two things for maximum happiness. It's also well known he wasn't a particularly pleasant person to be around. So, now we are reading about how geniuses enjoy solitude. Is this because Schopenhauer was trying to justify his own lack of social skills and charisma? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. In the next part in this series, we will go over the second pillar of happiness Schopenhauer examines: what a man has. In other words, we will talk about money. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.